welcome back for part 2. What we're going to do is we're going to break down the pump itself. I'll explain some of the parts that come within it, some of the issues that you commonly would see with it, and go from there. This is a disclosure. I do work for an equipment manufacturer that sells these pumps, these items, but this is entirely my own side project, entirely my own honest opinions. So full transparency there. So first off, we'll start with the manifold. So the manifold on this RMV pump by AR Annovi Reverberi is going to be a full brass. Like I said in our last video, brass is going to hold up a lot better against corrosion and against cavitation, which is going to be the buildup of air pocket bubbles that kind of cause these little micro explosions inside the manifold that kind of eat away at it and eventually cause damage to the pistons, to the internals, and as water is corrosive by nature. So the longer it sits in here, the more damage it does. That's why we always recommend to winterize your stuff before you put it away, or even if you're not even using it for like a few weeks. All right, so first off, whenever I go through this, I always start with the inward innards, if you will. So this first part here is going to be part of your seal packing. So seal packing typically consists of a retainer. Right? This RMV is going to be a little bit different than most pumps, but it's going to have an outer retainer or packing ring. In most breakdowns, they'll say packing ring. Then on these outer ones, you'll see these are a lot more flexible. A lot more flexy. This is going to be your low pressure seals. These are typically, if there's an issue with your oil, if you get water inside your oil, the seals can sometimes be an issue. It could be your pistons, but a lot of times you'll see it when there's heat damage, because as it goes into bypass, it'll start to heat up and build pressure, and when these get damaged, especially these inner rings here, then that'll cause the seals to kind of fail. Water gets in your oil, and it's a whole thing, and you have to replace these. But either way, back to the story. So we have your packing ring, low pressure seals. Now on the inside here, this is going to be your whole big piece here. You can kind of use a pliers like I am now, and should be able to. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit for you. Usually what I'll do is I will work it out. They're usually pressed in there. A lot of these packing rings use O-rings to get that nice tight seal. So it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. And eventually, I see it coming. Just kind of work it on both sides. And eventually you can wiggle it out. And this is going to be what typically is called a packing retainer. Packing retainer is what holds typically your low pressure seal, as you would see. And it almost always is going to have an O-ring here. These typically, from my own experience here, I haven't really seen packing retainers go bad. But when you see a bunch of corrosion, this not so bad. When you see a bunch of corrosion and stuff, that's when I would start replacing it. And they're typically, I would say, relatively cheap part to replace. Now, the next step is going to be, I know this is probably not the proper way of doing it. You could probably use a pick, but I feel like picks damage the seals as they come out. But typically, I like to use my pliers here. You can just kind of get under it and scoop it out a little bit. But then this lower piece, this lower seal, it looks identical to your low pressure, but you see there's slight differences actually. So this, in a nutshell, is typically considered your seal packing assembly. That's what you'll see a lot of. Now next, this is where a lot of people, a lot of times if they have pressure issues, it is typically either going to be this unloader, or what I've seen or noticed is it's going to be the pressure valves inside. You can call them pressure valve, check valve, complete valve kit, whatever is your liking. But what we're going to do is we're just going to take our pliers here, and we're going to take needle nose, nice and slim, get them around there nice and snug. And hardest part for these is, at least for this one, there's not really a nub to get to. But you can give it a nice shake. We're going to keep trying. There we go. Alright, I know there's probably a better way of doing that, but that's what I've at least come up with. And it shouldn't hurt it all that much. Just a little bit of plastic. Anyways, these are your pressure valves. How they operate is actually pretty simple. So as water's going in through here and coming in, it's going to be coming in through your inlet here, and it's going to be running through these pressure valves that are face down. On the bottom of them is this little plate. And what this plate does is it just acts as a spring. As the water comes in and pushes and pressurizes, it allows it to escape up and through, and then move through the cavities over to the high pressure. Even though they're going to look very similar, most of them look very similar. You have your low pressures, which is the initial entry here. Then they're going to move to the high pressures, which will pressurize them again, and that'll move through the outflow. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these out, and we'll go on to the next. Alright, so this is a common issue sometimes when people are removing valves. They'll pull and the seat in itself doesn't want to come out. So it's going to actually separate. I'll kind of show you. So you'll just kind of have to fish the spring out. What we're going to do is we're trying to fish the seat out. Anyway, there's your seat. There we go. All right, like I said, it's just a little seat that let's do this. Let's just reassemble it for the sake of demonstration here. So what we do first, without losing the spring, what we do first is we're going to take our little seat. Our little seat here is going to sit on the upper side. You'll see this. There's this flat side here, this flat side, and then the O-ring, and then the actual seat itself. So we'll put the little disc seat on there. Oh, come on. Then we're going to take our spring in the valve cage. The easiest way of doing this is just putting the spring back in the valve cage. It just kind of goes right over it. And then we're going to put it all together. Just like that. The valve cage just snaps right into it. No issues. Say this was still good to use, which it might still be. Then it's ready to be used again. But that's getting the seal packing assembly and the at least low pressure valves out. All right, we're back. Got the wrenches. So common ones that I typically use: 15/16, 7/8, and 1 inch. But we're not going to be worrying about taking it off. We're not going to be using it anyways. This outlet's obviously done, so we'll work around it. So typically this can be your unloader. Right? The unloader is what dictates the pressure. You tighten it down, increase pressure. You loosen it up, decrease pressure. When the pump, when you let off the trigger and whatnot, so let's say theoretically, you know, we're spraying and you let off the trigger, right? When you let off the trigger, your pump goes into bypass, and what that means is that your unloader knows that it hits this certain pressure, and what it does is it starts to recirculate the water, because your engine's still going and the pump is still pumping, so it's building up pressure, building up heat as it's doing it. So what it does is, this is what happens with these internal unloaders, is the water, like I said, as it comes in through the inlet, it goes through your low pressures, comes up, and goes out towards the high pressures here, and then say bypass is activated, then it's going to start recirculating. Typically it's going to have like this little portion here is going to be where the water kind of comes back in and mixes with the inlet, or with the water coming in, and that just starts the chain reaction of circulating the water and trying to bypass the buildup of heat and pressure inside the manifold. And this is where a lot of times when customers have pressure issues, it's typically because they have, you know, released the trigger and they've kind of just let it sit in bypass. You know, don't leave it in bypass mode for more than, you know, 1, maybe 2 minutes. Like 2 is pushing it. And, you know, typically that's where you see seals go bad, or there's debris or damage that happens to these valves. And you don't necessarily need a new manifold, but it still costs money to replace these parts, and obviously time to take it apart and redo it. So unloader, like I said, it's corroded, it's done. We're not going to be using it. All right, if you like what we're doing here, please like and subscribe. It's just me having fun at the end of the day, just getting off of work and going through this stuff, educating. I'm passionate about it, and hopefully I can teach you guys a little bit along the way. So again, like and subscribe and follow us for more.